Hey folks, Mr. Dell here. We are looking at this is from we're doing some order of operations and using positive and negatives, and this is from 3.1.1 and it's number 3-4. Okay, so this is CPM, sorry, CPM course 2 3.1.1 and it's number 3-4. It says to circle the terms and simplify each expression shown below. Simplify means to write an expression in simplest form. In the case of numerical expressions, the simplest form is a single number. So we're trying to get all of that to be a single number. So first, circle the terms. Well, my terms, remember, my numerical terms are just separated by addition or subtraction. So in this case, I've got this 7 and 8 100ths, and I've got 2 and 51 hundredths, and then I have this -3 and 84 hundredths, right? So I'm just going to be adding those up. So we start by adding those two, and they're both positive. So reminder, if you need to add these up um, using the algorithm, remember you line up your decimal place. So 7.08 and then 2.51. You line your decimal place up, and then you just add straight down. So 9, 5, and then the decimal drops down, and 9. So those two add up to be 9 and 59 hundredths. Then I take that and add it with the -3.84. Well, I have a negative number and a positive number. They're opposite signs. Remember, you'll have some cancellation of positives and negatives. So what we really do is subtract. Cancellation in this case means subtraction. So I'm going to subtract those two values, and then I'm going to if there's more positives, it stays positive. If more negatives, it would stay negative. But in this case, 9 is greater than the 3, so there's more positives. So I know my answer is going to stay positive. So I again line up my numbers 9.59 and 3.84, and in this case, I'm subtracting. So when you subtract with the decimals, you just line up the decimal place. 9 minus 4, this is the algorithm, is 5. 5 minus 8, we're going to need to regroup to do that. So I take from the 9, make it an 8, regroup, add a 10 to the 5, so you get 15 minus 7 or minus 8 is 7. Drop down the decimal place, then subtract 8 minus 3, and you get the 5. So my final answer would be positive 5.75 or 5 and 75 hundredths. Okay. So then B. Now with B, if I'm circling the terms, right? So in this case, I have a 7.8, but terms are separated by the addition or subtraction. So this right here is a full term, but it's got multiplication involved, right? So those are the two terms. So I have to, when I do order of operations, remember you always multiply before you add. So I need to do the multiplication first. Order of operations, remember, are parentheses, exponents, multiply, divide, add, and subtract, right? So you have to multiply before you add. So those two multiplied. 2.1 times -3. Well, first of all, a positive times a negative is going to just make the number negative. Now I just have to figure out what is 2.1 times 3. Okay. So you can do the math on the side, however you would need to, 2.1 times 3 if you needed to multiply it. Remember, when you multiply decimals, you just, in this case, adding decimals, you have to line up the decimals. Multiply, you just multiply as if the decimal wasn't there. And then the answer, you include the decimal. 3 times 1, 3, 3 times 2, 6. And then you look, there was one place of decimal, right? One decimal place, 1/10. So I need to make a tenth there. So the answer here is -6.3. So now I have 7.8 plus -6.3. So now I'm adding a positive and a negative. Again, so there's going to be some cancellation. So really, there's going to be some subtraction here, right? When you have a positive and a negative, you subtract the numbers. So I put the 7.8 minus 6.3. And again, now I'm doing subtraction, so I do have to line up the decimals. When you line them up, that becomes a 5. The decimal place drops, and that's a 1. So you have a 1 and 5/10. And again, we determined that it would be positive because there's more positive than there is negative. So 1 and 5/10 is the answer on B. C, this here, the type got a little bit off there, but this means 5 times -3/5. So it's 5, and when we're multiplying a whole times a fraction, I usually put that whole over 1. 5 times negative 3/5, right? And then plus 2, this is saying 2 times 1 and 5/10, 1.5. So I have multiplication and addition. Remember, you got to do your multiplication first. So I'm going to multiply these numbers. When you multiply fractions, right, if you see that you've got the same numerator and denominator on them, you can actually do some simplification. The 5s would simplify out, cancel out, and you end up with really just negative 3 times 1 all over 1, which ends up becoming a negative 3. Plus, and then 2 times 1.5 is positive 3, right? 2 times 1.5. 1.5 times 1.5 plus 1.5 is 3. So negative 3 plus 3, my final answer here is 0. Last one, D. So D, if I'm reading this right, I've got this is a term, right? So that right there is 4.35 times 2 plus 5. That's a single term, plus 5. And then here I have, it looks like I have 3 1/4 times negative 1, right? So it's 3 1/4 times, when you have a number next to a parenthesis, it just means multiplication. And then my last term here is negative 2, or excuse me, negative 10. So let's do the multiplication. Remember, always do the multiplication first. So let's simplify that to be one term. So 2 times 4.35 is 8.7. Okay. And then I'm going to rewrite what I have, plus 5, plus, well, here I have 3 1/4 times negative 1. Anything times negative 1 just makes it negative 1, or makes it a negative. So this becomes negative 3 1/4. Now, I notice I have a decimal place here and I have a fraction here. So I'm going to just make that fraction into a decimal so it's easier in the end to do my addition, subtraction. So 3 1/4 is 3.25, and then plus that negative 10, right? So now I have that string of addition. So with all addition, I just go from one to the next. So those two add up. 8 7/10 plus 5 makes that 13 7/10. Okay. Then I add that to the negative 3 25 hundredths. To add a positive and negative, remember you're actually subtracting because you have opposites and opposites cancel. So that cancellation is that subtraction. So we end up, I'm going to just write it over here so we see it. We have 13.7, and I'm subtracting now 3 point, remember, line up the decimal point, 25. So what happens, I've got to add a 0 above that on that, make that 13.70. So do that subtraction, use the algorithm. I'm going to regroup from the 7, make it a 6, make that a 10. Subtract, I get the 5, I get the 4, I bring down the decimal, and then I get 10. And then it's going to be a positive 10 because there's more positive than there is negative. So 10.45. Last one is to add that to the negative 10. So here I have a positive and a negative. So again, it's subtraction. So really it's 10.45 minus 10. So the 10s cancel and all that's left is the 4500s. And it's a positive 4500s because there's more positive than there is negative. So that's my final answer for D.